everyone. Just waiting for a few more people to join and then we'll get started. Okay, let me get started because otherwise it will just be a video of me sitting here staring into space. So good evening and thank you for joining Talk with Peer to Peer. It's always a pleasure to have you join. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Normally we have amazing guests come on and speak about what their organisations are doing to help combat knife crime and to help working with young people and supporting young people. Today we're actually going to hear the voices of some of our peer educators. Hey Shae, I'll get you on in a sec, So we're going to hear the side of our peer educators today. So these are the amazing people who go into schools and they are basically the face of peer-to-peer, and they are the ones that are at the forefront, and they are they're really working with young people and doing the best that they can. We're going to have two of our peer educators on today. So we're going to have the lovely Shae and we're going to have our lovely Lissy as well, Alysia. So let's start. We'll get Shae on. And let me make sure that there's no text. Hey.
Hey, you're right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Cool. Sorry, I'm still at work. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. You feeling better? I know a few weeks ago you were a bit unwell, weren't you?
Yeah, I was mashed up. No, I feel so much better. Happy to be back.
Amazing. So, for anyone who has kind of kept up with our lives, we've had our lovely Shae on before, who was brave enough to come on and share her stories, and is just doing amazing work now, giving back to the community, working with young people. She's recently joined Peer-to-Peer and is going into schools and delivering our sessions for us as well, which is absolutely amazing. So what we want to try and do with these lives today, Shae, is we just want to kind of hear the side of our peer educators, because we have our guests come on and they tell us about what they're doing, but we don't really talk too much about what we do.
Yeah.
So if you want to kind of just go through briefly what the lessons are that you've done, how you felt they went, just basically give us your insight into what it's like going into these schools and delivering anti-knife crime sessions.
Yeah. So I think I've been delivering. I think I've done 2 or 3 sessions with you lot. Can't remember. Predominantly with year 8s and 9s, and just really talking about the reality of knife crime. I think there's one side of when it going into schools and saying these are the stats, these are the figures, this is the effects of knife crime. I think we cover a range of things of how it affects people, how to save a life, why people carry knives and things like that. But I think another addition is actually being able to share just a part of my story and the effects of it. And I've always found that young people really enjoy stories. I think they're at that generation where they love stories, and they always want to work out how old I am, which they will never work out. But I think just going into school and actually being able to share that with them, but also just seeing actually how much these young people have been affected by things such as gun and knife crime and how open it is to them. It's sad, because I think when I was growing up, it wasn't in their face as much.
Yeah. And so from kind of me going into schools and delivering sessions as well, you feel about social media being a massive contributor to these young people being so exposed to what's going on in the world? Because like you said, for me as well, when we were growing up, it was that word of mouth kind of thing. You knew what had happened because someone would come into school and tell you what's happened. It wasn't, there's an actual video footage. I mean, someone could attempt to try and record something on their little BlackBerry or their little Sony Ericsson or something, but
pixelated.
Quality, you could never see anything. All you could hear was But now they're seeing like full HD quality videos of people getting stabbed, people getting into altercations and stuff like that. So what's your opinion on that when it comes to social media?
I think it's horrible. Like, actually, a few weeks ago, one of my young people got stabbed, and so I've got the clip of my young person being stabbed, and I was like, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see it. My young person being stabbed. I don't want to see pictures or clips of young people dying. It's very traumatic, and especially I think for me, seeing that before and seeing it now, it brings back a lot of things. But I don't think we understand the impact it has on young people, because they're seeing this. Some young people on one side are very scared, but also on the other side, they're becoming desensitized to these things. It's the norm, and a young person dying, a young person getting stabbed or anything like that, it's not normal. Do you know what I mean? And I think it's something we need to, it just needs to stop happening. But we're in a society that we pull out our phone every 2 seconds saying, oh, look what I'm doing. So it's an issue that we have in our society now.
Massively. I completely agree. I mean, this is what we covered last week with Tom from the Ben Kinsella Trust.
Yeah.
They are extremely passionate. They have the same ethos and the same morals, and whatever we're trying to do as an organisation, they're trying to. There's so many different organisations, but I feel like it's like we're all playing our part and doing amazing things, but effectively you need to sit down and have a conversation with these kids and actually understand why they are not terrified, or why they find it so acceptable to have a piece of video footage on their phone that could potentially compromise them. What they don't understand is that if they're found with that video on their phone, they could potentially be facing some sort of charge or whatever as well. They don't understand that. They don't understand that in the slightest. And that's why whenever I, for example, whenever I go into my sessions and I have conversations with my people, I always say to them that, how many of you have seen a video of someone being stabbed? Majority of them have put up their hands. How many people how many of you have watched a video of someone getting jumped or someone being beaten up, or even a one-on-one fight? It's just promoting violence as being the ultimate answer before even trying to negotiate or have a conversation or etc. I mean, I don't know if this would potentially relate to you with your young people, but me and my sister, Hina, the CEO, we actually went to the Ben Kinsella Trust exhibition the other day, and it was amazing. It was absolutely amazing. And any youth organisations can actually refer their young people onto it, and you can go and visit that exhibition. You just basically have to register for it, but it's free of charge. You can take your young people with you, and it's absolutely amazing. And one of the rooms, you briefly see it in our reel that we posted, but you go to this room and there's like 4 different scenarios of how something could potentially turn out. Now, young people actually wrote these scenarios themselves. And one was like, okay, we spoke about it, we sorted it out. The next one was one of the boys pulled out a knife, they got into a fight, dropped it, the other guy picked it up and stabbed him with it. Then there was another where he stabbed the guy and ended up doing life in prison. So it just shows you all the different consequences and the kind of implications that you could potentially face if you do choose to pick up a knife. So with that being said, so say for example, when you're with your young people, what's your advice that you give them if they get themselves into an argument, or they say they've got a problem with someone or whatever it is? What advice do you give to them to try and spin their head around a little bit?
Do you know what? I'm laughing because I'm actually in the room with my young people right now.
Are you?
Yeah. I'm still at work. I think I had a conversation with one of my young people earlier on today. Do you want to be on camera? Sorry, one of my young person just started sitting next to me. And literally, I think I'm very honest, so I let them know the consequences. But I always tell them, like, life is like chess. Always be 2 steps ahead. You don't need to react to everything. You don't need to respond. but actually the choices you make has consequences. And actually you need to think not just for now and what's happening now, but what's next.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of the times, especially in fighting situations, we as people, we don't want to look like idiots. We don't want to look less than. We've got pride, so we're always arguing and fighting back. But I think on the other side of it, it's about just being calm and actually saying, look, I don't need to rise to this occasion. Let me sit back and chill.
Yeah. I think
I would say,
well is this, you know, of what I've come to realize. I mean, I already knew this, but when you hear actual stories of when it's happened, it becomes real. Oh, my sister's just asked if you to get the young person on if they're up for it, or ask them off camera what they think about knife crime.
do you guys want to answer questions, but not on camera?
Yeah, I don't mind.
You don't mind? Do you want to answer a question, but not on camera?
About knife crime.
Yeah?
Go on. Wait,
Do you want to answer a question?
There's only 9 people on it. Yeah, go on then.
Off camera though, this is my personal.
Cool. If they want to put their face, they can. If they don't want
Yeah.
to.
If you saw her face. All right, so the question is, ask them off camera, what do you think about knife crime? Speak loud. That's the both of you. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
Nah, it's not a good thing. It's a bad thing.
Yeah.
But there's reasons behind why people do it.
What are the Did you hear that?
Yeah, but get her to speak a bit louder, because that's a good. It's a comment that would spark up debate, but I want to hear her side behind why she feels like that.
Why do you feel?
Because you don't know everybody's background story. So like you never know the amount of like grew up with that in their life. So like, yeah.
Yeah, and my question to you is, so in that circumstance or in that situation, do you feel like it's justified? Do you feel like it's right that whether that person's been brought up around carrying knives, or their family have carried knives, people that they hang around with carry knives, do you then feel like that's correct? Do they then have a reason to use that?
It's not correct, but they have a reason, but it's not right.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. And this is the thing, right? When we're talking about knife crime, it's not us turning a blind eye as to why they want to do it. We don't turn a blind eye to that in no way, shape, or form. But it's about explaining the potential consequences and how your life can potentially spiral way down if something does happen and you are found in possession of a knife. You end up using that knife, or that knife is used against you. So it's difficult for me personally. I can understand why someone may want to pick up a knife, especially nowadays. It seems like everyone's carrying knives, so the first thing you're going to do is pick up a knife and say, well, he's got a knife, so I've got to make sure I've got a knife so I don't get stabbed. But same way, you could take a knife out and get stabbed with your own knife.
Said that, isn't it?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like a catch-22 situation. Everyone thinks that they have to do something because everyone else is doing it, but you don't realise the risk that you're potentially putting yourself in, if you are the one who's carrying that weapon. Do you know what else I say to my young people as well is, this is kind of related to knives and guns, right? So more time people are buying knives off like the black market, or they know people who are selling knives, blah blah. You don't know where them knives have been. You don't know if that knife or that gun or that weapon has been used for a prior crime. So that if you're then potentially caught with that weapon and you're fingerprinted, and it comes back, okay, this was the weapon that was used for 3 murders that took place down the road, who's going to face it? You could say all you like, I didn't do it, but who's the one who's going to be convicted? That's what I mean. So it's just a difficult situation, because we understand that the rates of gang violence, we understand that the rates of knife crime are increasing, and it's extremely concerning. But we're trying to make the young people be the new future to change that narrative.
Definitely. I agree with that completely, man. And I think it is sad, because I think recently just my young people have been going out and coming back and telling me more and more stories of people carrying knives. Like, I've had at least 3 occasions, maybe 4 now, these past couple of weeks, where there's like, we're at a party and this person's carrying a knife and this one's pulled out a gun and there's fighting, and it's like, when would it stop? You don't know what's happening. You don't know actually how that can affect you. And whilst in some respect, for some of the young people, it's like, it's exciting, it's a new thing. We don't know the consequences, the long-term effect of this. So yeah.
Can I ask your young person a quick question? So has she heard about what happened in Liverpool recently with the 11-year-old girl that got stabbed to death?
No. Have you?
No.
Oh, have you?
No, I heard about it.
Yeah. Only one person.
So for anyone who doesn't know, there was basically an incident that happened in Liverpool Centre when the Christmas lights were being put up, and there was a young girl who ended up getting stabbed by 3 teenage boys. She was 11 years old and she was stabbed to death in basically in front of everyone. There was no shame, no secrecy. It was just like blasé in front of loads and loads of people while they was putting up the Christmas lights. So how old are your young people?
All under 16.
Okay, so I just want to ask someone's opinion. How does that make them feel? Obviously, the young
Was it intentional, or like did he just go up to her and just stab her?
So she knew these boys. I think she was, I'm going to be completely honest, I think she was a little bit of a troublemaker.
Yeah.
And these boys basically caught up to her and they ended up stabbing her to death.
Wow.
The boys
But
were close.
in that situation, I think the most alarming and shocking part of it was the fact that she was 11. And I just feel like every story I hear, they're either getting younger and younger, or it's just young people as a whole.
She was like 11. The 4 boys were 14.
Yeah.
That's wrong too, because she's a girl as well. That's mad.
Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure how much they was picking up. It's mad.
She's really quiet, but I can hear her. I'm hoping everyone else can as well.
I can move it a bit closer.
What
to me.
about the whole situation?
Yeah, so the girl's 12, 4 boys.
That just makes me want to be like more observant of my surroundings.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
To like be aware of people who are around me.
It's true.
Okay. So let me ask you girls, as females then, who, and you've just heard about this story, what you say that you are going to obviously be more aware of your surroundings, but what precautions do you feel like you would take going forward now to ensure your safety, or to ensure that you're not getting involved in something like that?
Good question.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
So basically, what precautions and what kinds of ways are you going to be able to keep yourself safe when you leave your house, or when you find yourself at these parties and stuff like that, and people are carrying knives and they're carrying guns and etc.? What are you going to do going forward to try and ensure that you're keeping yourself safe?
Keep your distance.
Keep a distance.
And not get involved.
How? Sorry.
How?
How can you keep
the right person to like?
How? But no, you can. How can you keep your distance? So scenario. I'm gonna give a real scenario. In a party, everyone goes into a circle. You think I'm laughing. So you're in a party, everyone goes to a circle, you think everyone's doing a little 2-step. The one thing now, someone pulls out a knife. What are you going to do to stay away from that? Everyone's laughing. No one's answering the question.
I would
Hide behind the DJ stuff.
I would I would run.
Yeah.
Because especially if they're being reckless and just going for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I would run. I would hide behind the DJ stuff.
Yeah.
If that's my safety. So then when everything's started done, I'll go home.
So you look for your run, find a place of safety. When everything's quiet down, you'll go home.
Yeah.
What would you do if you was in that situation?
What, like if it's outside?
Yeah, outside.
Okay, cool. I would run to the nearest shop and tell them, be like, look.
I don't know.
Like something's happening.
Would you call the police?
No.
Would you call the police?
No. If that wouldn't be on my mind. I wouldn't think about
Not even
calling
that.
the police.
It's not even that just be on my mind. That I just wouldn't call the police. Period.
No, I wouldn't.
Why?
Both of your
Just my business.
your answers are correct. The only thing I would say, young lady who said that should hide behind the DJ stand, you want to be getting yourself out of there.
But it was
If this person is on a mad one, on a rampage, and they've got mental health issues and they just want to mash up the whole dance.
But say for example, if it's like happening at the door, like how are you doing?
Happening at the door, then find a safe space within the property or within the building. But if you are by the door and the door is closer to the DJ stand, just get yourself out of there.
Yeah.
That's what you've got to do. And the thing is no one will judge you about whether you want to call the police or not. That's your own personal decision. If you don't want to call the police, you don't have to. As long as you are not the person who is affected or has been attacked, there isn't really much that you can do apart from giving a witness statement. Okay, and that doesn't guarantee that that person will be caught. What the main important thing is to do is to just get yourself out of there. Get yourself out of there, keep yourself safe, and deal with it next time. If you are approached by the police, again, it's up to you whether you want to give a witness statement or not. It's entirely up to you.
They can't force. So you're right.
Yeah, so many young people are against the police. Even the young people I work with all refuse to engage with the police.
Same here, to be honest. But I think because there's a lot of distrust within the police service, but we'll get into that.
Yeah, we won't get into that. As long as you sort of know your rights and you know what you can and can't do, that's it. Then the rest is up to you. You can make whatever decisions you want to make, and we'll keep it as that. So that's absolutely amazing. So Shae, let's just go back to your sessions. Or that you are obviously enjoying them.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you kind of struggled with a little bit, or if there were any young people within your groups that you felt may need additional support? Obviously we don't need to name schools or students' names or anything like that, but is there anything that or any concerning comments that young people have made within any of your sessions?
So I think within my sessions, anything that was hard, no. I think I've been doing youth work for a little while, so it's quite easy. Both handles. So I think the concern is the amount of people who either know someone who's carried a knife, who see you later. Sorry. So young people knowing how someone who's carried a knife, they've been impacted by gun and knife crimes, or just some of their stories of how they've responded, of what they've seen. I think that's what's challenged me the most, because I think it's one thing seeing it, but if they haven't got the right support network around them, it's the what's next for them.
Yeah,
which worries me. See you later, hon.
I completely agree, and I feel like a lot of the time the young people that are really troubled, they need support as quickly and efficiently as possible.
Yeah. Because
this is what I was speaking to Tom about on our last live. It's prevention is better than cure. So it's not even necessarily preventative. It's actually avoiding young people getting to that stage.
Yeah.
Prevented from doing anything in the first place.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's about them making the right decisions to say, well, that's not even in my mind. It's at my house today and go and buy a knife. There's no chance. I'm never going to do that. So it's about getting their minds stimulated enough to make them think, oh, well, I've got better things over here. The grass is definitely greener over here. If I've got my education, or I find a good job, or I become an entrepreneur, whatever it is, everything over this side is where we want to keep as many young people as possible. And that's effectively what we're all doing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the more people you have the same voice wherever you're doing it changes. And I think one thing with youth work is one session we may not see the complete change of a young person's life, but I've had a young person come up to me who I used to work with about 5 years ago. I saw him the other day and he was like, oh, Shae, do you know what? That time you sat down and battered me up. So he thought he was a really rude boy. And I had a long conversation with him just about, look, the roads ain't for you, just that preventative work. He actually said, I've always remembered that, and that's one of the reasons why I've never gone down that road. And it's those small little conversations we have as youth workers, as adults with our young people, can make a difference. It may trigger something one day.
I agree. And I think it's also a situation of young people understanding what's behind that kind of glamorous lifestyle that everyone's trying to portray. It's explaining to them what the dark side is, what the consequences will be of their actions if they do decide to make that. The fact that half of these people that they consider friends and family won't even come and visit them if they're in jail. They won't send them no money. They won't do anything for them, because at the end of the day, as much as gangs like to kind of promote this family environment, effectively it's sort of like, it's like an enterprise. Do you know what I mean? It's like you're technically working together. These are your work colleagues. They're not your family. They're not your real friends. Everyone's out for themselves.
Yeah.
Quick buck. Do you know what I mean? I understand in some situations young people don't have anyone else, so that's their only option, to turn to that.
Yeah.
Because they don't have a sense of family or being wanted or being involved in a family unit elsewhere. I completely get that 100%, but you can find that in different places. It doesn't necessarily have to be off the basis of committing crimes or selling drugs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it's a catch-22 actually, because even with that, like, we're planning a project around anti-knife crime with our young people, and actually we spoke about that, and one of the things they kept saying, look, regardless, I'm not involved, I'm not in it, but because I speak to such and such who's there, or I've taken a picture with him, I'm involved. So it's not as simple as I can't hang around with them. They were like, why can't I grew up, I went to the same school and stuff like that. But I think it's also, we were saying, it's also encouraging yourselves or the young people to say, look, these are my people, I'll say hello and stuff like that, but actually I'm doing my own thing. So I'm about football, I'm about music, or whatever it may be, my education, and having that clear picture. But yeah, it's weird. I think it's a hard one now.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. On that note, Shae, I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
because we've got to get the next live on. But thank you people for giving their opinion as well. That was a nice little touch. So thank you so much, girls.
you're welcome.
No problem.
So yeah, just a massive thank you to you as well for going into these schools and doing your amazing work as per. And we're so glad and so happy to have you on board. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, Shae.
See you later.
Good rest of your evening. Take care.
Take care. Bye. How do I come out of this?
Yeah, you got to cross off, babe.
All right then. Cool.
Okay, guys. So, Rosie, sorry, I've literally just seen your comment. Sorry. Okay, let me get the next live on. The next guest on, sorry. Bear with me, guys. So we're going to have our amazing Alysia come on now. She's also... Oh!
Bonjour.
The one and only.
Hello.
How are you?
You alright? Yeah, I'm good, thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Was you part of the then?
Was I what?
Was you part of the live just then? Was you watching it?
Yes, I was watching it. And to be honest, actually, it's very interesting what Shae was saying. I think there's a lot of similarities from what I would take from lessons or the latest lessons that I've done to then what Shae was saying. And I think a lot about kind of young people and identity and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay. So as I was explaining before, we're just going to kind of be covering what your experience of being a peer educator with peer-to-peer has been. This year has done, I don't even know how many sessions with us. She's been here for many years. She's part of the furniture as well. So yeah, Alysia's been amazing. She's like our superstar lady. If anyone calls in sick, she's there to pick up the pieces.
Yes, just drive through to school quickly.
So go on, just tell us about your experience. I mean, you can talk about, it doesn't necessarily have to be just about knife crime, but just your experience with
peer-to-peer and being a peer educator? How's it been?
It's been an amazing experience. I think because it's not the typical teacher role. And like, we all know that. And obviously peer-to-peer is about young people teaching young people. And I think you go in there and you can say that as like a tagline essentially, but it's only when you get in front of those people that you're like, nah, I'm not the same as the other teacher. And it's not to undermine, because I think the teachers that sit in those lessons and support you are amazing. But the one thing I would say is that it's our role to create a different kind of like lens for them, and to create a different kind of safe space. Like, they're safe in school, hopefully. I mean, in the schools that I've taught in on behalf of peer-to-peer, they're safe in school, but there is a very, very different context when we walk into the room.
Yeah.
And I think because of who we are, and like, I still feel old when I go into a school, because people are like, miss, that, do you know what I mean? And I'm like, why are you calling me that? I'm not your miss. But equally, I think, like, you still are on a bit of a level with them. Like, we go into school, and school is very much about socializing in a great way. I think it's where you learn all your skills. It's very much about curriculum. It's very much about ticking boxes. It's very much about studying something, recalling it, like comprehension, all of that kind of stuff. And so I think when you have somebody who comes in and goes, you know what, we're switching it up for today, and even if it's something that you do like or don't like, in terms of like, you know, we teach about STIs, and then you get everyone that's like, oh, miss, I don't want to look at that. Like, you know, it's so important what we're doing, because I think it's more of a conversation. And I think when you're younger, you don't have as many like connecting conversations with people who are older than you, or who are not in the same life stage as you, because they're either parents or their family, or okay, they might be your elders in some sense from a community perspective, or they're teachers. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're people of authority, and you don't really, I think when you really get to an age where you know who your tribe are, sometimes at our age, for example, that might be someone who's older than you, younger than you, and school years don't matter and all of that kind of stuff. Whereas I think when you're in the school, it's like, I'm in year 8, so I talk to people who are in year 8 or year 9. Year 7s aren't cool, you know, and it's a lot more, I don't want to say segregated, but you know what I mean? It's very much more like within their groups.
Yeah.
And so I'd hope that we're like, I don't know, a bit of an interface in that sense, like a little bit of an in-between. Like, we're grown up enough to have a conversation, but we're also not in a place where we're telling you what textbook you've got to read every single day or week or whatever. It's very, very different. But I think there's lots of points I wanted to talk about, but one of the things that actually not struck me, but today I was reading something about El Chapo. Obviously, this is to do with drugs, but El Chapo's wife, I don't know if you saw it, and his wife's been sentenced for 3 years. Yeah. And the first thing I thought was like, look at that. Like, you're not I mean, yes, she's involved, don't get me wrong, but it's testament. 3 years is minor compared to, I'm sure, what a lot of people around her have got. Yeah. And maybe the attitude is like, you know what, it's only 3 years, someone got life, someone got da-da-da. But I just thought, look at that. Like, you're a wife, you're ride or die, you're doing loyalty, you're doing relationship, and all it takes is for you to be, not all it takes, but all it takes is for you to be with that person. Yeah. For you to then be part of that. And I think that's the other thing. Like, I know you and Shae spoke about a lot of different things, but where you guys were talking about consequences and how things can put you in a bit of a dark place, it is so telling when you hear stories like that. Because those people are also living in fear. Those people are also living in a way where they can be intimidated at any point. They've got to walk around with a certain front. They can't go certain places. And that's the same for lots of conversations about drugs, weapons, be it guns, knives, whatever it is. Like, it's not, it's not a joke. And the not even the glamorization of it, but the image that you see a lot of the times in life with everything is not exactly matching of what happens. But I think with that especially, people feel like, oh, well, they're doing that and that's their way of life and that's how they do things. But I don't think you realize how fearful that must be, like how scary that must be.
I think about it all the time, and I just think, imagine if you constantly lived in a life where you were looking over your shoulder all the time. Mm-hmm. You couldn't go to certain areas out of fear of someone attacking you. Like, I saw something the other day. There was 2 young black boys in a car. They were driving through an area, I'm not too sure where it was, but some pulled up on a bike and basically sprayed acid through their car windows, and it was because of the wrong area. and had recognized them as people who were affiliated with other people from a different area, whether it was direct, whether they were directly involved or not, but even just that, you being in the wrong place at the wrong time could potentially cost you your life. I mean, you see what some burn victims look like, and it really does mess up their lives. It messes up their lives for a long time until they learn to love themselves again and realize that, okay, this is part of my story, etc. But just that in itself is mental. It's absolutely mental. Like, you think about all these stories about mistaken identity. You hear about all of these stories about, like, even with the Ben Kinsella story, his friend got into an argument with another guy, and so Ben was running away because these boys were chasing him with knives, and he said, well, this isn't even my argument, I wasn't involved. So he stopped, and 3 boys jumped him, stabbed him 11 times in 3 seconds.
Yeah.
And lost his life. His friend who got into the argument didn't lose his life. It was Ben's life. So that happens so many times. The amount of stories that you hear of people who weren't even directly involved, that they become the casualty, or they're the ones that end up losing their lives. And it's shocking. It's shocking.
And I had quite a few conversations like that. So I recently taught for peer-to-peer in a school. So I did a whole day with year 8. And it was all anti-knife crime lessons. Obviously, we then we did talk about guns, because that's part of our content anyway. But I suppose we were more in terms of knives. And exactly the same thing as Shae, before I even kick off on this, the amount of people that put their hand up when I said, has anyone been exposed to, know anyone, like anything like that, it was, then I'd probably say 20% of every class. So I taught 5 lessons, and I'd say about 20% of every single class put their hand up. And I felt blessed in a way that people were comfortable enough to put their hand up, because I put my hand up as well, because I have certain family situations and whatever that I know about. But to hear that, I'm like, wow. And you kids are down the road from me, 15, 20 minutes away. I'm at a different life stage, so I'm not maybe going to be in that same space, but that was incredible to me, and not in a good way. It was very, very, very surprising and shocking. But I think the other thing that is so hard, which you guys touched on, and I think, again, which has come up when I've been with my young people, is they're looking at you like, but miss, these people might be my friends. These people might be my family. Like, and it's so difficult. How many times does your mum, your dad, your guardian, whoever, say, I'm not feeling that person, or you shouldn't be chilling with that person? And because of who they are to you, if you care about somebody, or you think they've shown you a very, very positive side, or you think they're there for you, or whatever, and they might be in that moment, it is so tough to be like, I'm separating myself from that. And especially when you're talking to somebody who's year 8, so you're what, 12, 13? Like, I don't want to say it in a patronizing way, but you've got so much more to learn about yourself, is what I would say. And so even at an older age, it is so hard to go, do you know what, I'm doing me. That sentence in itself sounds great, like, yeah, do you, but it doesn't work like that when you're in life, when you're surrounded by people, and when you're seeing people every single day. People catch you at a bus stop, they know where you live. Like, it doesn't work like that. So I think that's going to be one of the ongoing challenges, not just to do with knife crime, as we're specifically talking about now, but like the stage of life that we're talking to these young people at. They're not quite there with it for themselves. That's why it's important that they have a support network, and they have the right people around them. But I really do feel for them. And I think what the young people were saying before about, you don't know the reasons behind it, and some of these people are very much embedded in your life, it's true. And I think as peer-to-peer, we never go into that situation going like, all right, well, you're stupid for being with that person, because why are you going to be friends with someone like that? No, not at all. Like, you are friends with who you're friends with.
I actually had a brief debate with a couple of
a debate. Zainab had a debate. Okay, yeah, go on.
It was a debate because I had to remain professional, even though I wanted to say to these girls, who do you think you're talking to? So basically, as one of the points that I make is, about how people can potentially keep themselves safe, right, and avoid themselves involved in potential risk of picking up a knife or getting involved in something that could potentially compromise them or implicate them. So I said to the whole class, I said, one of the things is avoid hanging around with people who you already know are affiliated with crimes, are committing themselves, carry a weapon. So the girls wanted to pipe up. They went, Miss, that's not true. Like, that's my friend, so I know that they're not going to do that to me. I said, how do you know that? She said, oh, but I just know. I said, no, you don't know. I said, you could say the wrong thing one day. If your so-called friend is comfortable enough to let you know that they're carrying a weapon, or to let you know that they're willing to do something illegal, they will drop you or fling you under the bus with no hesitation. There'll be no question about it, because effectively, when it comes down to it, it's every man for themselves. When it's related to gun and knife crime, when it's related to any sorts of crimes, it always boils down to, I'm not saying everyone, but more time it boils down to, it's yourself. How many videos do you see? There's one video I see the other day where there's two guys that are being charged. One's being charged with armed robbery and the other one's getting like an assault charge. And then he said to the judge, but why am I just getting charged for the armed robbery? And that's when he clocked that his friend had snitched on him and said, yeah, him. So this was his brethren for years and years and years. They was friends doing whatever they was doing for years, blah, blah. And the man just snitched on him in 2.5 seconds. So this is what I was trying to explain to the girls. I said to them, they was like, yeah, but I know that they won't do that. And I kept on asking them, how do you know that? They're like, I just know that's my friend. I said, okay, but if they flipped on you, that's not your friend no more. And they couldn't say anything. They couldn't say anything.
And I think even in that, like saying to somebody, because we all have people that we trust in our lives, right? And there's people that you should trust and that people you can put your trust in. And I think it's tough to make you question that trust when you're like, that is my bona fide, that's my friend, that's my solid thing. But I think the point that you made there, and the point that we always make in our lessons, is you've got to be looking at people's intentions, what they're willing to do around you, and small things as well. Like, are you hanging around with people who are willing to do whatever it is, or telling you that they've got a knife, they've got a weapon? But like when somebody like banters, but it's not banter because it's hurtful, or they'll do something where they will embarrass you in a certain situation. Like some of that stuff, yes, it happens, but some of that stuff teams with all these other things are telltale signs that that person is very much more about their own pride and their own ego, and whatever suits or works for them that will help them to win, than it is about you. But yeah, you can't always see that. And I think the association side of things is a big deal, because so in the school that I was in East London last month, the supporting teacher, he told this story in every lesson. And he was saying that he went to a prison to visit, I think he was working with young people in a school or whatever. And he met somebody who was serving 25 years. And then obviously the kids are like, oh, okay, well, what did he do? Because he's saying, oh, what do you think the person done? And they were like, it was literally by association. And whatever crimes had happened, like within that, he was part of that circle. He was part of that conversation. And I know, similar, I've heard loads of cases like that where it's like it's who you're with. And so I don't know, there is never a perfect answer, but it is looking for those signs. And it's just some part of it is trusting your gut as well, and being like, that doesn't feel right to me, or that's not something I want to be involved in, and therefore I need to move myself out of this situation.
This is why we're so kind of stuck on, and what we're trying to drill into young people's head is about joint enterprise, because a lot of young people don't understand that. So what Hina just said is if they're happy to commit a crime in front of you, when you haven't consented to being part of the activity, they haven't considered your friendship or your values or what could potentially happen. Therefore, they can't be your friends. That's spot on, because if someone commits a crime and you're there, no one's thinking about joint enterprise, because if there's CCTV to implicate you, if there's eyewitnesses to implicate you as well as the person who committed the crime, you're going to jail. You're going to prison, standard. And one of the stories that I tell them is some guy that I used to know years and years ago. I met him not long after he had got out of prison. He had actually served 7 years in prison from the age of 14 because there was a stabbing that took place at a fun fair. It was his friend who stabbed another guy, and that guy died. So there was about 6 or 7 of them that all got charged with the crime. And they all had to serve time in prison. So I said to them, I was like, imagine you're your age now, because we're talking about year 8s, year 9s. I said, imagine you're your age now. You go to a fun fair with your friends. One of your friends stabs another guy who's part of another rival gang or something. And then you find yourself in court being charged for manslaughter or being charged for first degree, whatever the charge was. You're standing there, and he got sentenced to 14 years in prison, but it got, with good behaviour, he only did half of that.
Reduced,
but still 7 years. 7 years. He was 21 when he got out. He was allowed like weekend visits and stuff like that to see his family, as they do in juvie, but it's ultimately he has that on his criminal record for the rest of his life. He has to face the fact that he has to spend however long in prison, and it just shows you how easy. He had no idea that the crime was about to be committed. He had no part to play in it whatsoever, but he still got charged with the crime.
And life's not the same. When you're younger, you think, 21, like, I can't wait to be that age. But when you've missed out on that much of life, you'll realize that it's very, very unhealthy. But I think the legal side of things is also something that we touch on a lot. So within our lessons, we will always go through different facts, basically, about what kind of sentencing you can be looking at if you're having, even if it's like an imitation weapon, or if it's joint enterprise, if it's guilty by association, whatever. And when I was in one of my lessons, I remember one of the young guys being like, so what happens, if I stab someone, or someone stabs me, and then like I get hurt, and then I stab them, but obviously, like, if I'm in hospital, I said, do you think there's not people that are handcuffed to a hospital bed?
Oh my God.
It doesn't work. And what me and the teacher were explaining is we don't work on an eye for an eye. It doesn't mean that if I hit Zen and Zen hits me, then it's like, well, we cancel each other out. Because one could be self-defense, don't get me wrong, but somebody can still get done for both crimes. It doesn't work like that. And so I think they know some of the basics. A lot of them will know about, I don't know, like, you can get stopped for this, or you can get arrested for that. But I think also the severity of that kind of stuff. Like, when we were younger, we had a visit. I don't know if you would have had this, but we had a visit where they brought that cell to school. Did you have that? Yeah. And it was, I think it was in a playground or whatever, but like you had to go in it, and you saw like what it was like to be in somewhere that small, and blah 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 blah. And like, that is scary. I have been fortunate I would say that I've not been around people who are involved in certain like crimes. Prison me no way. Oh yeah, that's what it was called. Good memory, T.
Oh, that's what it's actually called. Yes.
Yeah.
You got good
memory. Not her just saying prison me no way. We know that. No. So, and that was a small experience, and I think it's really minor. But I think some of the, like what Shae was saying about those little bits adding up, is like, okay, cool. Like, I'm starting to get this now. I'm starting to realize that there is like gravity and a big impact on what this little today action might be, what this little hanging around with this person might be. And I think that's where obviously our work is massively important, because it's cumulative. It is. And even the other day I was teaching STIs, and they were like, oh, miss, like, we've seen this lesson. And I was like, well, then you'll know what to, do you know what I mean? Then you'll know the answers, and it'll be great. And you'll have learned it, so you can teach me. And I think we don't always appreciate the fact that those like small bits will add up, because that's what happens. That's what happened at this like time in your life. you have to learn, keep making those mistakes before you move. But for us, we don't want our young people in that situation where you make a fatal mistake, or you're in that situation and someone, it does something that basically kind of
Well, this
ends
is
your
what I
life.
was saying to Shae. It's not even necessarily preventative preventative work that we're trying to do. It's grabbing them before they even get to that point of being at the crossroads of whether I should make this decision or whether I shouldn't make this decision. We want to catch them when they're still like fresh minded, their minds are still like sponge, they can absorb everything still. They're not kind of completely set in their ways yet. Do you know what I mean? So it's like trying to grab them now to tell them about everything that we teach them about, and having conversations with them that maybe necessarily the other adults in their life are not having with them. That's also another contributing factor. I know growing up, I was never, I mean, when it comes to like sex and stuff like that, obviously we were sat down and had conversations with, but when it comes to actual gun and knife crime and ways to keep yourself safe and stuff like that, as a female, no one really had that conversation with me. Like, oh, make sure you do this. If this happens, make sure you get yourself away, blah, blah, blah. I was associating myself with people who were carrying knives with no hesitation. Do you know what I mean? So it's also about removing that stigma of just having conversations with young boys, because it's not just young boys. There's girls picking up knives nowadays. There's girls being stabbed.
Yeah, 100%.
You know what I mean?
And also, it's not all at the result of men as well. It's not all, they're following a guy and or they've been groomed by da 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 da. It is them and them alone in that sense as well. So yeah, I do. I agree with that. And I think that thing about not having the talk is very interesting, because I'm thinking back and I definitely never had that conversation. And there's a guy that I went to primary school with who is in prison and will be probably for another, where are we? I don't know. Then I think he was sentenced like 20 something years. So I went to primary school with him. Secret, he was the first boy that I ever kissed when I was in primary school. But he also, like, his mum was good friends with my mum. My mum used to be a childminder, so he used to come to, like, I grew up with him. And I didn't go to secondary school with him. But I say this because parents try to do the preventative thing, which sometimes doesn't involve the conversation. So only now do I know that his mum took him. So he used to live like further into East London, and he came to our primary school, and his mum was trying to keep him in that area because she knew that where they lived, he could easily get into the stuff that he ended up getting into. He went to secondary school in the area that he lived in, and he ended up getting into drugs. He was carrying a knife and whatever, and actually the crime that he committed was quite a harsh one, where they convoyed a car and stabbed someone through a window and and I know that his mum, I'm not saying that she wouldn't have had those conversations with him, but just kind of relating to my mum and parents and whoever, she's doing the right thing, right? She's a child. She's like trying to make sure that he goes somewhere there's a quote unquote decent area to try and keep you away from people. But I think those conversations were probably still lacking. And we definitely didn't. I mean, aside from kind of the start, the early years of peer-to-peer, where we would have had people like your mum coming into schools and stuff like that, I don't know, it just wasn't really a conversation that even anyone was willing to enter into.
No, I completely agree. Now, the difficulty that I'm finding is with my son, for example, he's 10, but he'll be going to secondary school next year, which means he'll be going to and from school himself. He will be finding his own little independence and stuff like that. Now, I have brief conversations with him, but he's quite sensitive. He's a very sensitive boy. He's very emotional, and these kind of conversations actually scare him a bit. He gets very concerned and very worried. Now, what I'm trying to do is kind of change my approach to it and not be full blown like, okay, there's people out there stabbing each other, so make sure you're safe. Do you know what I mean? I'm not trying to scare the life out of him, but I think it's so important to start having even little conversations with him. Like, he knows himself, for example, if he gets to the station before I get there, or he walks down from the bus stop by himself and he meets me at Romford, whatever it is, he avoids big groups of teenagers, he avoids big groups of people, just because I've always said to him, just be careful. You just need to be careful. Don't get yourself involved in anything. Don't be nosy. Just get from A to B. Walk from wherever you're walking to Lidl, wherever you're meeting me, and that's all you need to do. You don't need to get involved in things and blah blah. That's my approach. Whether it's right or not, I don't know, but that's just my approach. That's also me preventing him from associating with people that are way older than him as well. I think that is definitely a massive contributing factor, is when you've got young people that are extremely exposed to things that their minds are not mature enough to actually handle and process. And I think another thing that I try to do as well is that Kai's very much into sports, so he goes to basketball and he goes to netball as well. So giving them a hobby, getting them involved in something that steers their mind away from, when I'm bored, I'm just going to go and hang around with my friends on the street. Do you know what I mean? I've already told Kai from time as a teenager, there's no chance of him hanging around at the street. Like, after school, we all did it. Do you know what I mean? We all did it. We hang about the shop. You go and get chicken and chips. You go and get McDonald's, whatever you're doing. If you had mornings, you'd go and get McDonald's. If not, you got £1 chicken and chips from Bossman.
Magic times,
we all did it. But it's just, I'm trying to engrave into his brain now that he's not going to be kind of just hanging around on the streets and doing nothing. Do you know what I mean? Coming home at 10, 11, 12 o'clock at night, and I don't know where he is, and as if I'm not going to question. I question everything about his life now. I question, and it's going to continue. I look through his phone. I don't care. I don't business.
And I think the other thing as well is, I was going to say, so the getting involved in different things, like, it's not actually always just about distracting as well. Like, that's also a way of making a varied group of friends. And even as big adults, that we were having a conversation about that today at my work. And one of the girls that I work with was saying she's moving to a different area, and she was like, how do I make new friends? And I was like, well, if you go out, like if you go to certain places on your own, or you go with one other person, sometimes you'll get into conversation because it's a smaller group and it's easier for you to just kind of like chat to people. And then somebody else was saying, like, do a hobby, get into a class, get into sports, whatever it might be. And even for a young person, it's that, because you are going to be associated with so many different people. The world is so small that it's almost guaranteed that you're going to know somebody who does X, somebody who does Y, somebody who knew blah, 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 blah. Like, and it doesn't mean that you're involved in it. You can still keep yourself out of it. But I think even that, then having a varied group where you go, actually, I'm going basketball with these lot. It gives you a bit more of a reason in that sense to then move yourself out of that situation, or to just enjoy other people's company. It doesn't even need to be seen so deep. Like, it just gives you a bit of variety. Denise just said hobbies help young people have a sense of purpose, and they start to find their skills, likes and dislikes. I agree. And I think it helps you to know yourself a bit better. And trust me when I say, like, me and Zen are saying know yourself, as if we know, like, you never get to a point where you're like, all right, cool, I know every single thing about me, there's nothing more to learn. So it's never to be, to any young person listening or rewatching or whoever, or parents, whatever, it's never to be patronizing, but you just go through different stages in life. You do, and there's certain times when you're young, and that is amazing, and it's definitely to be held on to. But I think this world sometimes tries to, like, rob you of that, and it's not that young person's fault, but it's I don't know, it's mean outside of your house. It is.
Liz, this live is about to cut off, so let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for joining. As always a pleasure, and thank you again for being such an amazing part of Peer to Peer. We're grateful for every nook and cranny. We'll catch up. I mean, I'll see you on a personal level anyway, darling.
See you later, darling.
Thank you so much, and thank you to everyone who joined. We appreciate your views, we appreciate your support, so thank you so much. Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.